Hello, I'm James Taylor,
He is, and I'm Maria Franzoni.
and you're listening to the SpeakersU Podcast. Maria, good to see you today.
Good to see you too, James. How many layers are you wearing today for those who are watching on the podcast, listening on the podcast?
Multiple. You see, this is the difference because I'm up in Scotland today filming this, where it's always about 10 degrees colder than it is where you are in England. So you're probably just lounging there with your martini, all the kind of, it's all very easy there down there in England.
I've got a cup of tea, and don't tell the husband. He probably's noticed I put the heating on, James.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Do that. So, before we came on, you were saying you've been very busy. And last week you came on the show and we spoke about you're just kind of recovering after an operation. And so I hear you're a very busy lady at the moment. So what's been going on this week?
Well, it's interesting because I think it's going to be relevant to what we're going to talk about, actually. I'm going to make it relevant, James. So I had a bit of a quieter August because I had personal stuff going on. We shared some of it. Let's not go back into it, and other things going on. So I took my foot off the accelerator. And in September, I thought, I want to have a busy month. I want to make lots of money this month, and I want to do a lot of work. And so I put my foot on the accelerator, and we'll talk about some of that because some of that definitely relates to this topic today.
And I think it's sometimes difficult for us to get time. I'm probably going, the next one we do of this, I might end up recording it from a hotel room somewhere in the world. But your name came up last week. I was in Denver in Colorado speaking for a client's event. I was being the closing keynote speaker for, and also they actually asked me to MC, which I don't do that often, which I really enjoyed. It was a 2-day event for about 1,000 people. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to hang out with our mutual friend, David Avrin, who's featured in your book, I believe.
As you are. Yes, absolutely. Well, David's particularly featured because his message of, the speaking business isn't the speaking, it's the actually getting the gig. He's so right.
Yeah. He's absolutely so right as well. And David's one of these guys, he does a lot of, which we don't have so much in Europe, a lot of industry associations. I seem to be about 75% of his business is association conferences, which is huge in America, but just doesn't seem to be such a big thing here in Europe.
In Europe, the budgets aren't as good for many of the associations, and also not all of them have such big memberships. There's still opportunity, of course. But yeah, it's a fantastic way to get into the US market, is going via the association route, for sure.
Now, I think that's probably the first gig I ever got where I don't, actually, funny enough, I've got one coming up. I'm just about to go and do one. But I actually don't do that many. And I think probably the association conference market is struggling a little bit in the US, which we can talk about, and about how different things go through different seasons as well, and for different reasons as well. But finally, that Denver one I just did there was the first gig I've ever done where the welcome kit that the client gave me as a speaker included an oxygen tank.
What? What?
So I do remember this. So Denver is, they call it the Mile High City, and I have done an event before in where was it? In Quito, in Ecuador. There was myself and a great speaker called Mike Walsh. You probably booked Mike Walsh over the years.
Brilliant.
Great futurist. And he was the first person, because he just literally flown in that morning. It's a really high, second highest city in the world, capital city in the world, and he actually had an oxygen bottle next to him in the green room backstage. And for this one, because I just came, thankfully I came in a day early because I wanted to acclimatize, but the client very kindly gave me a little bottle of oxygen just in case.
Now, you can't take that on a plane with you afterwards, I imagine. I suspect that's banned, is it? Probably quite highly explosive as well.
I think I ended up giving mine to some of the crew backstage, and I don't think they really needed it, but I think they quite enjoyed having a little bit of an oxygen burst when they were working backstage. But that's another story. So what are we talking about this week, Maria?
We are talking about a portfolio speaking business, portfolio speakers, and I think it's one of my favourite topics. I love anything to do with business, in the business side of speaking, obviously, is a favourite topic of mine. So yes, we're talking about portfolios. And actually, to start it off, maybe, James, you could share whether you have a portfolio speaking business and what that means for you, what that portfolio means.
Yeah, it's something I aspire to having. Actually, different times I've had it. I've had versions of it. So actually, let's define what we talk about when we're talking about a portfolio speaking career. Maria, you're probably better on definitions than I am. So when we talk about this idea of a portfolio speaking career, what do we actually mean here?
I so am not better at definitions, you cheek. You're so wrong. For me, a portfolio. So most often people think of speaking as simply keynote speaking, which is a mistake in itself because there are so many other different types of speeches. But the idea of a portfolio career obviously exists, and people have different jobs and different functions, different roles. So the idea of a portfolio speaking business is where you are not delivering your expertise only in one way. And one way is speaking, but maybe you might be adding other streams to that business and different ways of delivering it, which also then allows you to deliver your expertise, your solution, the problem that you solve. You can deliver it also at different price points.
Mm.
So it's your products and services in the way you deliver your expertise is my definition.
I once heard someone referred to it as a product suite, which sounded very nice.
Oh,
product
lovely,
suite.
lovely.
So you have like an Apple, the iPhone, the iPad, and the MacBook, and all different things as well. And I think for those speakers who are actually, it doesn't matter what stage you're at in your career. I was having a conversation with a speaker last month who was saying that he'd gone from being incredibly busy to suddenly, nothing was going on, looking at lots of blank pages in his calendar as well. And I think that's a challenge because this industry, the keynote speaking part, can really be that feast-or-famine side. So this is going to hopefully to deal the way I think about it. And I actually took something from a great investor called Ray Dalio. I don't know whether we've ever spoken about Ray Dalio on this show before, but he is the founder of a company called Bridgewater Capital in the US, one of the greatest kind of hedge fund managers. And he spoke about this idea called the all-weather investment fund or the all-weather investing. So it's essentially an all-weather investing is regardless of whether the economy is doing really well or is doing terrible and you're in a recession, it continues to grow. And so basically what it's about is about in finance asset allocation. So I thought, oh, this is interesting. And so I started thinking about how I could apply this to my speaking business. And so it's basically about having these different buckets, percentages. In his case, I seem to remember it was on finance, it was like 40% in long-term bonds, 30% in high risk and equities, 20% was in shorter bonds, so still lower risk things, and then you'd have like 7.5% each for gold, riskier types of investments, cryptocurrency. So for me, the way I think about this is I've kind of, in my ideal, and it's not like this yet, but you're going to help me, we're going to get there, is I think about it in terms of subscriptions, continuity products should be making up about 40% of my business. 30% should be coming from keynote speaking because it's like a quick cash bursts. And then I'll basically divide the others into kind of high risk projects and also like super low risk things like books, online courses, stuff that you can create that just continues to perpetuate for you. But that's the ideal. I have had at one point, I had it pretty close to that, but this year's just been very heavy on the speaking side. So I'm a little bit out of balance just now. So when speakers come to you with this, when you first say you need to think about a portfolio speaking career, how are they presenting, Dr. Franzoni? Tell me, how do they present to you?
Dr. Franzoni, what are the symptoms that we're trying to cure? So some speakers, in fact, many speakers already have this way of thinking, but maybe haven't quite formalized it because, of course, we were thrown into this way of thinking in COVID. If you only had speaking as your way of delivering, your business suffered badly. So people did get very creative. As you know, being a speaker on creativity, an expert on creativity, you often are most creative when you're pushed to do so, when you're you have to solve a problem, right? So many have already started, but the majority of them aren't aware of all the different options and opportunities. So I like to share examples from what other speakers are doing. And if you think about it, if you look at businesses, you mentioned Apple and you mentioned the product suite. But if you look at other businesses and other examples, you'll often get, Apple don't do this actually, they don't need to because of where they're at. But when you're starting out, you'll often get a free sample. which is something we're going to talk about in the future, I know. You might get a free sample to test a product or service out, or you might get a lower priced product or service to test things out. And I think then once somebody trusts you, they then might move on to a higher price, because sometimes it's very difficult to go in with your high price keynote when somebody doesn't know you yet. And it might be easier to have other products and services, or they haven't got the budget. Or as you say, the speaker that you mentioned who was incredibly busy, because they were incredibly busy, they probably weren't then giving time to prospecting and looking to the next season of speaking gigs. Whereas if they had a portfolio of services, each customer that they worked with, they could be, rather than selling in just the one speech, they could be offering from their suite of products.
And I think it's interesting, absolutely. And I think it's interesting what you were saying there is what you mentioned, this idea of, as you used the phrase, you said speaker, expert. So I guess that's a little kind of subtle difference. If you want to have this portfolio career, you're moving from just being a speaker to having an expertise in an area.
Yeah, I never like it when people just position themselves as a speaker. You have to use the term speaker because that's what people will be looking for, of course. But in your positioning, speaking is something you do. It's not, I don't want you to identify as a speaker. It's not who you are. It's not who you are, James, is it? You don't say, I mean, you have a specialist topic.
I hate this when when you're at a party or someone asks you, what do you do? It's one of my least favorite questions. And I know that people like Michael Port, for example. I know you're a fan of Michael Port stuff, and he's very good. Like, you get this down, and I do this and help this, and I'm terrible. I don't know if it's the British in me that's not very good at selling myself in this way or having a nice elevator pitch, but I kind of go around it a little bit because I definitely not be comfortable in saying publicly to someone, if I'm meeting for the first time, I'm an expert in something. That just feels a little bit kind of queasy to me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you wouldn't necessarily use those words. So, for example, I'll take myself as an example. I know you've positioned me as a speaking business strategist. I don't actually call myself that when I meet people at all. I say, I'm a former speaker bureau owner. I used to be an agent, and that often starts the well, what do you do now? Or now I work with speakers and help them too. And you've got that fantastic background in music, which, oh really? Oh, what do you do now? Well, now I take all those lessons that I have in music and I apply them to creativity. We've already done your elevator pitch. I think it's
You've done it. I'm writing it down just now. I'm going to make a note of this.
So you're not saying you're an expert, but what you're showing is your expertise, your credibility. You're showing your experience. It's the experience that gives you the expertise, really, and the credibility piece. And you're just trying to get people to start a discussion. We've gone a bit off piste here. Let's come back to portfolio.
No. So let's talk about this portfolio career. Let's say if someone is a speaker just now, they're only speaking, they're only doing keynotes, or maybe they're doing trainings. What are the other things that you would suggest? How do you just start that discussion in terms of which other parts of their portfolio they should be building first?
It depends on the clients and the people that they're working with. It needs to be something that will be useful to them. But I'll give you some examples of what other speakers have done. So what other speakers have done and what we've done as well, or what we did as a bureau, creating videos. So video content, whether it's a video course or a standalone video that people can then use or buy as a follow-up or as an introduction, because often that video you can have one video that you can sell again and again and again. And of course, people do online courses and online video courses, but actually a one-off video, it can be sufficient. You don't have to have an entire course. A course also would work. Other products and services, retainers. A lot of the speakers I work with now hadn't thought about putting themselves on a retainer with a client to be accessible and on call and available. As advisors, as consultants, as mentors, as executive coaches. I can give you a huge list here. Writing articles for clients, writing a book for a client, a handbook in relation to the topic that they're dealing with. There's so much, being available on a call as an advisor. There's so many things that you can do, and actually you're limited by your own creativity. So this is where you come in, James. You could come up with so many ideas. because this is your thing, right? And of course, then there's AI solutions. You can bring in AI options, an AI version of you, which I think is the next step, of course, for many. And many of the AI speakers, I'm sure, will be going that way.
Yeah, I know that in you mentioned AI, that like Marshall Goldsmith, I know has an AI Marshall Goldsmith that companies can subscribe to, so their employees can ask the AI version of him coaching questions about how to improve their management skills. Interesting. I sometimes find that those speakers who are kind of like sell from the stage speakers, which is not what I do, and I'm not really good at that, but I know people that are really great at it. Often they have thought much more deeply about these other revenue streams than often the keynote speakers. It would be on a London Speaker Bureau or a Big Speak, for example. Is that something you've seen?
Absolutely. And what's interesting is that a lot of the speakers who get paid for speaking will sort of look negatively at that because I don't want to pay to play. I don't want to go on stage and not be paid, and have to sell. But there's so much we can learn from that side of the speaking market, for sure. And most of them are making much more money than the
Yeah,
speakers who are getting paid to speak, right? And have products and
yeah,
services that don't require them to be present. Whereas the model of being paid to speak only requires you to be present all the time. And, you've got to manage your oxygen levels, as you mentioned. You've got to manage your energy. You've got all that travel. You were talking about jet lag last time we met.
yeah.
That's hard. And we're not getting any younger, James. I don't know about you, but I haven't discovered how to get younger. But I just want to come back to your
No.
point because I made a note. You were talking about AI and speakers using AI. My favorite AI name and character, everyone's going to go and look him up now, is actually an assistant to one of the speakers who again, I think is fantastic. Andrew Davis, who's a brilliant marketing speaker. His assistant is called Drew Dini. Isn't that just fabulous? I mean, to have I just love that. And you can actually contact Drew Dini on Andrew's website. Everyone's going to go and look now. And he's basically a younger, fitter version of Andrew. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that.
And doesn't sleep and works 24/7 and
He
probably can
works
speak
with,
in multiple languages as well.
I suspect he can, yes. We might have to test
Yeah,
that
yeah.
out.
So just to give you, I remember when I was doing International Speakers Summit and I interviewed all these people, and I was asked, that was one of the questions I asked: what other revenue streams do you have apart from going up on stages? And it was amazing, the variety. And I think it often comes back to the personality of the individual speaker. Some people like Frederick Harren likes writing books, and so for him it's just speaking and writing books, and that's it. There was a speaker whose name has gone out of my head, a speaker from the US. I think he's in Montana or Utah. And he speaks on not the sexiest of subjects, but safety at work. So his clients would be lots of engineering companies, mining companies, for example. And he himself, he is physically disabled, and that was through an accident at work. So he has authority to be able to speak on this topic. And what he is brilliant at doing is he will go up and he'll get paid, I don't know, $20,000 to go and speak at a conference. But when he comes off stage, he will say to the CEO, "This was fantastic. We should continue this going." So like it becomes like not just a inspiring thing, an idea of safety, but a culture of safety in your organization. Let me get back to you. I have an idea for this. And then what he does is assistant then follows up. And he essentially upsells these clients on an annual recurring membership for all the employees. So every Monday they get a safety video, which he's pre-created. And, he's got like 5 years worth of this stuff. So a company starts on day one and he's got like 5 years worth to go. So he doesn't even have to create a lot of additional content now. And the last time I spoke to him, I think he told me that from just that bit alone, this additional side thing, it was generating something like 1.6 or $2.6 million a year for him.
Yeah.
In
And
addition to his speaking fees.
No, I mean,
And he doesn't have to go anywhere.
It's genius. I love that. I love that because it's a huge benefit to the client in the fact that, they're paying $20,000 for that speech, but actually the speaking fee is a small percentage for the overall cost of the event, and the cost of people being out of their roles, still being paid, but not doing the job they're being paid for because they're sitting in a conference. And many clients don't think about how do we make sure that all that investment isn't lost? Because let's be honest, as soon as you get back to your desk the next day, you've forgotten, at least 70% of what happened the day before. And then are you going to apply anything? You go back to your normal habits. So that he's doing, it's a service. And I think some speakers are resistant to selling on these, what you might call add-ons. You called it an upsell, additional services. They're resistant because they think, I don't want to come across as salesy. I don't want to come across as that person. You're actually serving them. You're helping them to do better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and I think it's, once again, I think it's a personal decision for each of the speakers as well. I tend to go in I would call it the tip of the spear for me is the keynote. And then if I have anything, I actually probably want to go higher in terms of my, the things I might want to do. I remember in London Speaker Bureau, you had a lot of boardroom advisory, which I think is a really interesting area, where a company would want to bring in the former head of MI6 or the former head of a bank or a politician or someone who's like the top expert in AI or in a particular field to be there for their quarterly board meetings. I mean, that's an area you don't actually hear too much about, but I know that London Speaker Bureau, they can almost get built a kind of key part of the business in that side.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, Kate Lossius is the one who's spearheaded this. We must make sure we call out these people, and really has made that a huge success, because she's passionate about these topics and these areas and these experts. It's a fantastic service, that opportunity to bring somebody in to sit on your board. And yeah, you can go out and do that yourself, but if you've got somebody curating that for you and helping you and advising as to who would do that for you, it's genius. And if your topic is relevant, why not offer your services in that way? Offering your services, running workshops, running masterclasses, facilitating sessions, as you did. You actually emceed as well as speaking. So adding on other services while you're with the client as well. Many clients will have a keynote speech.
Yeah, sorry, I was like Judy Garland used to. So we're talking about Judy Garland. Sorry, Maria.
Very excited.
I'll let you finish your thought before. Sorry, I was getting very excited about Judy Garland there.
We'll come back to Judy because I've got a story about Liza. What I wanted to say was that many clients will book you for a keynote speech, and the question to ask them, what else is going on in the day? Because if they say, oh, we've got breakout sessions, well, you're there. Why don't I do a breakout session too? I don't need to charge my full fee of what I would normally charge for a breakout session because I'm there, charge a little bit extra. You're adding some value to them. You're getting a bit more income. It also means that you're saving them a lot of time because they haven't got to go and find, I didn't know you could do a breakout session. Yeah. So it's about adding value. It's not necessarily about selling something else.
Yeah.
Talk about Judy Garland. I want to know the story.
Judy Garland. So Judy Garland, they called her the triple threat, because she could act, sing, and dance. And I think for those speakers who can speak, they're great keynote speakers, they can train, they can workshop, they can teach or facilitate, and they can also MC. I think if you're in charge of your topic and you're great working with clients and your the bookability formula, it links into that, I don't think you'll ever be out of work. I think there's so much work out there. So, for example, that one I just did, and we're in Denver, I'd actually already spoken for them at the start of the year in Italy, and we had such a great relationship with the team. They said, James, could you come and be the closing keynote speaker for our event in Denver? But we like your energy. Would you also MC for that? Now, a lot of speakers will absolutely say, under no circumstances do I want to MC, because it's a slightly different skill and not everyone likes to do it. And I like it. I think that's the reason we do podcasts like this. I actually enjoy asking questions and being on, conducting panels and things like that. But it really makes you pretty valuable to the organization if you can do that, because unlike the keynote speaker bit, where you're probably only ever going to get invited by that client for that particular event once, or maybe they'll bring you back a few years later. If you can then transition that into perhaps emceeing or workshops, you create an additional ongoing relationship. And I'll give you another example of that, not an emceeing one, but a few years ago, I did a keynote for Bell in Canada, the telecoms company. And so I was there, I think it was an opening keynote speaker for their sales conference. And we got a great relationship. And they said to me, James, and this is great online now, they said, could you deliver workshops on how to have that kind of be a good communicator and executive presence, which is actually not my kind of key area of expertise, but I'm really passionate about it. Could you deliver this for our people? So that one keynote resulted in 16 virtual workshops I gave over the course of that year as well.
Wow.
So it's kind of just, and I think it just kind of goes back to this idea of, they say don't fall in love with your topic or your product, fall in love with your customers' problems. And I think when you fall in that, then you kind of, ideas start to come to you, like, how else can I serve this client? How else can I improve? The gap that they're falling down in is in this part here. How can I help bridge that gap? And sometimes it's not even you that has to deliver that service. I remember doing that with that one in Bell, and they asked me to deliver some of them in French. Well, I don't speak French. So I actually got another speaker who is a great speaker, French Canadian speaker, and he learned my entire presentation and delivered the whole thing with my slides in French. So it doesn't always have to be you that goes on to deliver those additional portfolio services. You can be an opening, an introduction to other services.
Love that. I love that. Really brilliant. Really good. Yeah, of course, now you don't need to speak French, don't you? Because we've sort of got our Babel fish in our hands, haven't we, with AI? We keep getting back to AI. Sorry, pay attention. Yeah. And let's see if anybody was really listening, James, because I said I've got a great story about Liza Minnelli. Write in if you want to know that story, and I'll share it with you.
hello@speakersu.com. Email that address. Also, if there's any things you'd like Maria and I to talk about in a future episode of the show, just email hello@speakersu.com. We can review all of these. I think we've had some coming in already. We're going to start covering some of these questions or in future episodes as well. Is there anything, Maria, like to kind of finish off on this? If someone is thinking, like, what is that first logical step for them to take? Maybe they're just speaking just now, but they want to build a bit more of a portfolio, something's a bit more sustainable, a bit more resilient to changes in the economies. What is that first step?
Talk to your customers, talk to them, find out. And really, really, what you said was gold. Falling in love with the problem. Until you really, truly, deeply understand the problem, you can't start creating products and services that will help clients. So it's just get really obsessed with really understanding them, and the ideas will come. Super easy then.
Great. Let's talk about, we always like doing this towards the end of the show, a final tool or a tip that we're going to leave people with. Maria, so what is your one for this week?
Well, I'm going to talk about books because I know you're writing your book, and I'm really looking forward. I mean, I've read the draft, so that's really exciting. But I'm looking forward to seeing you launching it. So here's a tip about books that's come up several times, and I think it's genius. And a few speakers do this already. Stop me if I've shared it already, because I don't know if I have. The idea that when you are booked to speak, obviously you want to sell your book in. So we used to have it as part of our booking form when we would send it to a client and their booking speech set. And it would simply say how many copies of such and such, and you put the title, because some speakers have more than one copy.
I like that. How many copies, not would you like to? How many copies? That's...
Yeah, at the reduced rate, and you'd say at 40% off or whatever, and then they're thinking, oh, how many, etc. In fact, I've got 3 tips around books. Sorry if that's okay with you. So there's tip 1: stick it in your booking form. Stick it in your booking form. Tip number 2: whether they order some or not, send them an odd number box of books. So, for example, when I say odd number, send them 20 or 30 books anyway, if you've got an audience of 300. Because if you send them 1 copy that's signed, they can keep that. Or send them 2 copies, they can keep that and share one. What are they going to do with 20? Now, suddenly 20 people have got books and they're thinking, oh, I'm going to have to buy it for everybody now, because everybody's going to want a copy. Because how do I choose which 20 people to give those to? So that's tip number 2. Yeah. Tip number 3, I can't accredit these to the booking form is my idea. That book idea, I'm trying to remember who said that. It was a speaker who said that genius idea. Please identify yourself if you're listening so that we can give you credit. And the third idea is, I think it's Phil M. Jones was the first one who did this. You know his fantastic book, Exactly What to Say. When he sells that in, it's brilliant. I've got copies everywhere. When he sells that in, he asks the CEO of the company to write their own foreword for it. So then he has a number printed up with the CEO's foreword. I think that's a genius idea, because that really makes it super personal to the company and to the individual receiving that copy. I don't know if it would upset the person who wrote the original foreword, but I'm sure they wouldn't be upset. So I've got 3 tips there.
Yeah. That's great. I love all those are brilliant, and I've totally stolen Phil's idea of this because one of the reasons I'm self-publishing my first book is not because I had offers from publishers, is it gives me that flexibility to do exactly what you said. In fact, I was just talking to a client the other day was the one that's booking me for something at the start of the year. And I said, there's 3,000 people in the room. Why don't we give a copy to every single person in that room with the forward by your CEO, with your logo on the front of it? In fact, we can even maybe do some things around the colors of the branding so aligns with your branding as well. And that's 3,000 copies of a book sold. The average business book today, the average business book today sells 3,000 copies in total. And so, so this is great. This is fantastic. So we'll put those links there. Big credit to Phil M. Jones. If you don't know who Phil M. Jones is, go and check out Phil M. Jones's work as well. So I don't really have a tip. I have a tool today, which is probably quite a boring one, perhaps, but because I'm doing a lot of traveling at the moment, is called Tripit Pro. And basically what this is all my travel stuff. So you get itineraries and flight information and hotel information from all different clients, all different places. I just forward everything into this app and it builds out my itineraries. So the flights, the cars, the hotels, what time the AV checks are, it just does the whole thing. And there's a couple of things I really like about it. One is actually does your end of year mileage, how many miles you've done. So I think this year I'm probably going to get to about 250,000 miles traveled this year. And it tells you how many cities and how many countries you've traveled to as well. But the other thing that I really like about it is it's live, so it updates you if certain things are happening. So like a flight gets delayed, if your connection is a little bit shorter, and because we often travel on British Airways, which has a habit of cancelling flights and delaying flights, it will automatically, if it recognizes you've been delayed for a certain amount of time, will say, would you like us to submit this for you to get a refund on your flight or to get some money back on your flight as well? So that alone, I mean, I don't know how much it is. It's about maybe $100 a year, but I've got so many refunds from flights because the AI tool allows you to do that as well. So it's called Tripit. There is a free version just called Tripit, but you go for the Tripit Pro. It's got a lot of additional features in it.
It's not boring. That is absolutely game changing for speaker bureaus who have to create travel summaries for their speakers.
Yeah.
They can just use Tripit Pro and get the speakers to use that.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
In a way, I'd go back into being a bureau to use it.
Yeah. And what's nice about it is you can add people, so you can add people to as viewers of that journey or kind of coordinators of that journey, so they can either add things in or they can see that agenda. So if you look at a bureau partner or a client, you just add that in there as well, so they can see all of that information at the same time. So it just speeds up communication. And I know that like some bureaus will send me like a proper agenda, like the schedule and everything like that, but a lot of them don't. And so it's really up to you as the speaker to do a lot of the advancing in terms of logistics. So that's my little one. So we'll put that in the Tripit Pro. We'll also link to Phil M. Jones. We'll link to some of the other folks we've been talking about on this show as well. And I think that's us for the week. And once again, if you've got a question you would like Maria and I to answer, just email hello@speakersu.com and we'll do our best to get to those in a future episode. So, Maria, it's goodbye from me.
I'm going to go and check out Tripit. Goodbye from me.
Are you a speaker struggling to get the right bookings or wondering how to turn your expertise into a steady speaking income? Maria Franzoni knows exactly how bookers think. After years running a global bureau and representing some of the world's best-known names, she now works directly with speakers like you. Her one-to-one support gives you clarity, strategy, and the confidence to grow your business. Find out more at mariafranzoni.me.
Imagine stepping onto stages around the world, sharing your message, inspiring thousands, and getting paid what you deserve. If you're a coach, author, thought leader, or consultant ready to build a global speaking career, listen up. Introducing the International Speakers Summit with James Taylor, where 150-plus pro speakers, Trainers and business coaches reveal the exact strategies behind launching, growing, and monetizing an international speaking business. You'll learn storytelling that moves, mindset shifts that scale, how to package and price your talks, and even get video, audio downloads, workbooks, and bonus content. All of this for just $97 with the VIP Pass. Over 100 hours of premium, actionable content. Ignite your stage presence. Amplify your voice. Dominate the speaker marketplace. Go to SpeakersU.com and unlock your International Speakers Summit Pass today, because the world is waiting to hear you.